Formation Commission at 9 a.m. And let's conduct the roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth,
Here.
Commissioner McCowan,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Huff,
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Here.
Commissioner Bazzani,
Here.
Commissioner Rosenberg.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a time for public expression. Any person may address the commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCO, which is not on the agenda. There is a 3-minute limit, and no action will be taken. Anyone from the public would like to speak, please come forward. Seeing no one, we'll move forward with item number 3, other business. There isn't any. So moving on to item number 4, we have the consent calendar. That includes item 4A, approval of the April 1st, 2019 regular meeting summary, and B, approval of the April 2019 claims and financial reports. Commissioners?
I have a question on the claim report, and I have a correction on the minutes.
Okay. Please
Page,
go forward.
page 6. You want to wait for the clerk? I have a change in the minutes. It's page 6 under HF. It's got my name twice. It's offered by Commissioner Ward, Gonzalez, and Ward.
I didn't even catch that. Good catch.
And then on, that's all for the minutes. Do you want
Okay.
to have anybody else have any?
Anyone else on the minutes? Seeing none.
Okay, on page, for the claims, I have a clarifying question. On page 10, under bookkeeping, there's 542 expended, but it was only 6 hours. That works out to about $90 an hour. I'm just wondering what the clarification
And
is on that.
what page and what item?
Page 10.
10.
Page 10 of 110.
It's 5 hours of executive officer time, which is $100 an hour for the rate.
The executive officer.
If you see at the top of the column there, you'll see him
Okay.
in EO
I was
100.
just looking at past bookkeeping hours, and it was a lot lower.
Right. When I went through and did the reconciliation, we had to go back and do some corrections in QuickBooks itself to match the claims and minutes
Okay.
and clarify the
Yeah, I was
check
looking at your
numbers.
explanation. You know, you have a explanation. It didn't really say anything different than you always do any other month, so I just wondered why it was an error. Thank you. That's all I had.
I'd like to move the consent calendar.
Second.
You get to choose which one with the second. So we have a motion for approval and a second. Please conduct the roll call vote.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we have to item 5, public hearing items. We have 2. We'll start with 5A, final budget and work plan for fiscal year 2019-20. And I need to ask, the clerk, has proper notice been established? I see copy of the newspaper for both Ukiah Daily Journal and Fort Bragg Advocate.
It has.
Okay, thank you. And has all correspondence, telephone calls been noted and distributed if there is correspondence?
Yes, there was none. Thank you.
Okay, and so we'll go over the process. We'll hear from the staff first with their report. Then we can have questions by the commission with responses from staff. Then we'll go to public comment. After public comment, the staff can respond to the public or ask questions, so can the commissioners. And then in conclusion, we will close the public hearing, and it'll be before the commissioners, and at that time, a motion can be made. So let's begin with the staff report.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing for the final budget and work plan for fiscal year 19-20. A workshop was held on the preliminary work plan and budget on March 4th of this year. Staff incorporated direction from the commission, and a public hearing for the proposed budget was held on April 1st. At that time, the proposed budget and work plan was adopted and distributed to the member agencies. We've received no comments on either the budget or the work plan. The final budget remains the same as the proposed budget at $160,248, as detailed on page 14 of your agenda packet. The rolling work plan was revised based on direction from the commission at the last meeting to include CSA, CSA 3 as a priority, and to move Covelo CSD down a year. The fiscal year 1920 budget maintains the apportionment fees at $135,000. So adoption of this budget would authorize up to $25,000 from reserves to close the gap. Just want to note that the adoption of this budget is expected to result in the reserves falling below the targets that are identified in our policy. The attachment 1 has the financial summary. It has not, that has been updated to the end of March, which is our bank statements, the latest date of our bank statements. The final budget is on page 14, and the rolling work plan is on page 15 of your agenda packet. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, questions?
I do. We are $14,506 less for operational reserves for the 25%. Did we discuss anything? We're just going to let it go for 1 year?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that about the 14?
The target operating reserves based on our budget would be $89,568, which includes the legal reserves.
Right.
But we're actually $75,062, which is basically $14,500 less. Did we talk about anything regarding that deficit?
Is this for the end of next fiscal year?
Yeah.
We did discuss it at the last meeting, and then it was decided to move ahead. We are going to be taking less out of reserves this year than we anticipated, most likely, and so the commission's direction was to move forward with the numbers that we had.
Okay.
Commissioner McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I don't see it as a deficit. I think inherent in the decision to reduce the legal reserves to $35,000 was that we were reducing the target for our reserves. So we had a pretty thorough discussion of the implications of that, and the commission ultimately agreed to reduce the legal reserves. I believe we thought the $50,000 was excessive, and additional funds could be raised and put to that use if needed.
Yeah, well, I see that we did lower it to 35,000 from 50, but we're still, our 25% operating reserves are lower by 14.
We have 40,000, we have more than 40,000, I believe.
We have 40,000, but we should have, the way I read it, we should have 14,000 more, but maybe I'm wrong.
40 is 25% of 160.
Okay, Commissioner Orth?
I was just going to note, we also discussed the potential of raising our cost to the 3 groups next year in the next budget year.
Yes,
So
we did.
that was part of the discussion.
So, any other questions? So we'll go to public comment. Anyone that would like to comment on this item, please come forward. State your name for the record. Seeing no one come forward, it comes back to staff and the commission. So it looks,
I did want to, for clarification, that 40,062 is the target that we should be, that according to our policy, our reserves policy, that isn't the amount that we would have at the end of the next fiscal year. The amount we'd have at the end of the next fiscal year is $63,575. So 35,000 of that would be for the legal reserves, and the remainder, we would be a little under our target.
Thank you.
Any other clarifications, questions?
I'll move to adopt.
We got to close the public
Oh,
hearing.
sorry.
So we'll go forward to close the public hearing, and we do have a recommended motion on page 11. Commissioner Ward,
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 18-1909, approving the final budget and work plan for fiscal year 2019-2020, and direct the executive officer to distribute the final budget and work plan for fiscal year 2019-2020 to cities, special districts, and the county as required by law.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any statements? Seeing none, please conduct a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move forward for our second item, 5B, for public hearing, and it's to consider adoption of a resolution approving the City of Willits Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update. We went through the procedures previously, and so I won't restate them, so we'll go to staff for a report.
Thank you. I wanted to note that the public hearing notices are included in the packet. This item starts on page 19 of your agenda packet. On December 3rd, the commission held a workshop for the City of Willits Sphere of Influence, Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence. We received direction from the commission at that time, which has been incorporated into the draft before you today. There was no information available in the files to indicate that a sphere of influence had been adopted for the City of Willits, so at this time it was considered to be coterminous with the boundary. I'm going to be referring to the map on page 32 in your agenda packet, which is a map of the city and includes a number of areas of study. So Area A on your map is an existing residential neighborhood and is located directly south of the city. And this area is being proposed for inclusion in the sphere at this time. There are two other areas. There's an area of an interest, number 1, 2, and 3. The area of interest 1 is a residential neighborhood that is located south of the city and adjacent. Area 2 and 3 are both areas surrounding the new 101 bypass. The Area 1 encompasses Della Avenue and Holly Street parcels, and also the parcels adjacent to the two new Highway 101 interchanges. This will be the first time that staff is recommending use of the area of interest policy that was adopted last year by the commission. The areas around the bypass are recommended for an area of interest, and that is consistent with the policies of the county general plan as well, which calls for increased coordination in those areas between the city and the county. The areas included that are being recommended for inclusion in the sphere do meet the criteria for a CEQA exemption, which at this time is why they're being included. The other area is included as an area of interest for future consideration in the sphere. We did receive one question from landowners in the Della Avenue area. I responded to that question and heard nothing further from that landowner. The municipal service review and sphere and staff report were provided to the county CEO's office and planning, and no comments were received from them as well. We do have Dusty Dooley here, who is the Willits Community Development Director, to answer questions.
Okay, and I neglected to ask if proper notice has been established, and I can see that
has.
notice in the Willits News. But you did note at least one phone call that was received, but all correspondence and other information has been distributed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
I guess I do have a question, but before I do, I did, prior to this hearing, request that our executive officer check with legal counsel to make sure that I could vote on this, and I was told that that would not be an issue.
Correct.
My question is, the question asked by the landowner in the Dell Avenue area. What was the question?
He had question about, he needed clarification of the difference between a sphere and an annexation. So he had questions about the sphere. If they were included in the sphere, would that mean that they were automatically part of the city? So that was just clarifying that question.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Ward.
Page 20, excuse me, under, it says up at top of the, well, halfway down, it says item number 3 and number 5. Item number 5 under discussion was just, if I read it, is just adding an "and" to the, instead of "a," it was an "and." Why would that be excluded? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, if the reason is because we used language that was verbatim out of our policies and procedures manual. So we decided to make sure we were consistent with the language there. We left it as is.
Okay.
All righty. Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a question. So we have Area A, which is proposed to be included in the sphere of influence, and I believe that area is served both by city water and sewer. Then Area of Interest 1, adjacent to it, I think the narrative was that that area was served either by city water or sewer, but I'm just kind of wondering why that developed area, primarily accessible from the city of Willits, wouldn't be included in this sphere.
We were not able to get clarity on whether that would be exempt from CEQA, and so the practice for LAFCO has been if a sphere update triggers CEQA, then the agency would need to pay for CEQA. So this area, in going over it with our legal counsel, it wasn't clear because it's not fully developed to the maximum extent. The parcels that were selected, those in Area A for the sphere, are developed to the maximum extent and also receive water and sewer from the city already.
And then also implicit in your answer, I think, is the city is not requesting that that area be included within the sphere.
The city was interested in including that area in the sphere, but because we were not able to determine the CEQA part of that, we went with the smaller subset that we were sure was exempt from CEQA. The city is going to undertake a general plan amendment in the next couple of years, is my understanding, and at that time, they may roll in CEQA for an expanded sphere and request an expanded sphere at that time. But I believe Mr. Dooley could answer that question maybe a little better.
Correct, and then also at that point, some explanation perhaps of what other areas the city may be looking at for annexation.
Okay.
Just one moment, Mr. Dooley. Commissioner Orth.
Yes, and I really appreciate all the information. I especially appreciate the seeing where the private water system purchased by the city of Willits is just all over the map. Wow. My one comment, though, is the Sherwood Water Group. Brick Trail's also going through an MSR update right now. Is going to be placing Sherwood Road into our area of interest, Lower Sherwood Road. And the map is showing just basically a tag of probably a place of delivery of water, but it's actually 25 parcels along Sherwood Road serviced by city water through the Sherwood Water Group. I would appreciate to see it given the same level of attention, in other words, the parcels shown. And that's because, one, we're going to be asking for it to be in an area of interest, and two, it's going to be a real focus of government agencies, whether it's Service Area 3 proposals in the future, and it's of great concern to the Brook Trails community that Sherwood Road be given a level of attention. Because the state wants us to do a water intertie, this is one of the routes where that potential intertie might go. So knowing the extent of water service going up Sherwood Road will have to be studied anyway and mapped out through the Brook Trails municipal service review as an area of interest. So whether we do it here in this mapping just to show the area of service, that would be fine with me, because it's extensive. It goes several miles up Sherwood Road. And that's the only detail I'm requesting to be extended in the whole process here, so.
That's good.
Yes.
Clarifying question, are you referring to the map on page 52 of the agenda packet?
Excuse me for not saying that.
Is that-
Yes, it's hard for me to read the page number. The City of Willits Water and Wastewater Parcel Inventory outside of City of Willits,
Thank you.
which is this map here. I can't read the page number. Too small.
Okay. So, thanks for clarifying that. So, we are here to public comment. Mr. Dooley, please come forward. State your name for the record, sir.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, Dusty Dooley, doing my best to serve the role as Community Development Director for the City of Willits. Thank you for taking the time to review this matter before you today. Appreciate staff's effort in bringing this matter forward. We know how LAFCO likes their orderly boundaries, and so this certainly better matches up the sphere of influence with a number of parcels that we both provide water and sewer services to. And the city is in support of the adoption of the revised SOI today. And I guess it's our very first SOI. So that's kind of a cool moment. I don't think we've ever officially had one, and it's always just been by default our city limits. Then we'll certainly look into more information, Commissioner Orth, on the Sherwood situation, and talking to our staff, who's relatively new. We didn't have full details on it, but our understanding is that there's a past agreement where the city is able to fill a rather large water tank that serves a number of parcels up there. And I understand why that getting that key information and getting that showcased on things like a map's important to Brook Trails. So I'll certainly work with LAFCO and Brook Trails to get that information displayed correctly. Just while I'm up here, there was a question about what the city's, future growth patterns, what requests this commission may see as far as a new SOI, and thereby creating additional lands that would be eligible for future annexations. I'm going to speak in general because this isn't a topic that's gone in front of our full council yet. But if you do look south of Della Avenue, so the area to the south of the city of Willits, to the west, and even the north, the county has that land zoned for a variety of residential densities. One of the hardships in recognizing that density is the lack of water and sewer services that are available to those parcels. The city, at some point in time, many moons ago, they purchased a private water company, and so we inherited a number of these out-of-city connections. And they're all over the map. And so for us to ever try to draw an SOI around those parcels doesn't really fit in with your regulations, as I understand. And so that's probably not fully feasible. But regarding these residential zone lands to the south, the west, and even the north, there may be an opportunity, at least we might want to look into the idea of the county and the city teaming up. You guys have the land, we may be able to extend water and sewer services. For that to happen, obviously needs to be approved by our respective decision makers. But for that to happen, we would need to draw an SOI around it and to annex it in order to, we need to annex it before we can provide water and sewer services. Before we can get into the annexation discussions, we need to have a tax sharing agreement. And so that might be the first domino to fall. With residential development, you're really looking at building housing. It's not just an automatic economic revenue generator. In fact, I would argue that the city needs to be very careful with how we plan that out, because there's an opportunity for us to lose quite a bit of money if we don't collect proper development impact fees, stuff like that. But I just wanted to, again, just sort of mention that in general, because, in my time working for the county, I recognized how difficult it was to find real opportunities to build significant housing, and some of the issues that has arisen from the lack of housing production in this county. And I see this opportunity around Willits, this opportunity for the county and the Willits to team up is probably one of the best, most realistic opportunities to see significant development in our community. So just wanted to mention that for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you.
And happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, and commissioners' questions? Commissioner
Yeah,
Ward?
Dusty, in regards to what you were talking about for the outside areas for annexation, what about Eva Claire and Furlong? That's half the street's city and half the street is county. Is there any way you could start an annexation process for that? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
ridiculous that
Yeah.
half that street is one and the other.
Right, yeah. I think that would be an area for consideration. When we talk about the CEQA work behind it, that can get expensive depending on the level of valuation that you've got to complete. And it might make sense, rather than sort of piecemealing it, to really come forward with like a full package with that complete CEQA analysis. But again, without having that tax sharing agreement in place, it becomes a little bit risky to be spending a lot of time and effort on the CEQA work, just because.
So do you feel you're going to be presenting to your council a plan for including all these parcels that you spoke of?
Yeah, eventually that's what I would like to do, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it might get wrapped up into a comprehensive general plan update, which I know the city is interested in undertaking. It's been quite a while for us.
Okay.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes, for your information, the Route 20 corridor, which is significant in the city of Willits, during the bypass design, basically, if we had done a Route 20 interchange, that would have caused Brook Trails to do a third access route. It's not our second access route to Route 20. And one of the considerations is that would make Route 20 a new main street for the city of Willits had that happened. So I just want to point out the significance of the Route 20 corridor to the city of Willits' future. And annexing that area in would give you more control of that not happening. So just want to make that note.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Commissioner Worth.
Commissioner Ward?
One more question. Back in 2015, the MSR talked about the city developing a planning commission. I know it hasn't happened. Is that still not in the future?
I haven't heard recent discussions about implementing a new planning commission. Right now, our planning commission
Sure,
is
the
our
city
council.
Yeah.
So if
But
you
there's
don't
no
like the planning
discussion of
commission's
that.
decision, you can appeal it to her.
Okay. Guess I could have asked you.
Yes, you could, by the way. Okay.
I'd just like to say that it's a well done report. Thank you very much. It was, and I appreciate the cooperation you got from the city as well. This is, I think, an MSR that we can all be proud of, and hopefully it'll be something that we could fall right into the city of Ukiah as well for future references. So,
Thank you.
job well done. Thank you.
Commissioner McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. More a comment probably, but I think it's unfortunate that CEQA was thought to be problematic for relatively small lots. Any additional development that could be facilitated there with future water and sewer would really be infill, and I don't see how including some of these existing small lots within an SOI really triggers CEQA, because I don't see how simply putting them within an SOI increases development potential. When you actually go to annex or you go to extend water or sewer, yeah, you could have more of a CEQA issue there. So sounds to me like we may be getting very cautious legal advice, but that's the way it is. But that's an issue I'm sure will be revisited in the future.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Just a statement again, I think when I saw the Fort Bragg SOI a while back, I was really impressed, but I think you gave Willits the same, I guess you did Willits really well. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I want to pass the kudos on to our analyst who wrote this, Larkin Filer. And I also want to thank the city for the back and forth. This has been taking us about a year to get through, but Dusty's been wonderful to work with, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dusty. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yes. So, it looks like we're completed there, so we're going to close the public hearing. The matter is now before the board. We do have a recommended motion.
I'll approve the recommended motion, from our staff.
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any other comment? Seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. And thank you, Mr. Dooley. Appreciate it. All right. Moving on in our agenda to item number 6. We do not have any workshop items for the meeting today, so we will move on to matters for discussion and possible action and 7A, and this is the draft request for proposals for independent professional audit services. Staff, please do the introduction.
Thank you. For the past 5 years, we've used Paling and Paling CPAs to do our annual audits. So this is a time for a refresher on going out to RFP for an auditor. This is consistent with our policy 5.2.2 for annual audits. So a draft proposal has been prepared, has been reviewed by our treasurer, and is being recommended to the commission for consideration. Upon authorization, we'll send the RFP out to a list of certified public accountants. And we have a tentative timeline in our packet. A staff report is on page 91 of your packet. If we are able to release it in May, then we would have the proposals due mid-June and be able to select a firm in July. And I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to answer any questions.
All right, and I'd like to ask our treasurer, Commissioner Ward, do you have any further comments, sir?
No, I reviewed the RFP, and it's very similar to what we've used in the past, so I recommend that we use that and get it out this month.
Commissioners, any other comment? We'll go to public comment. Seeing no one come forward, it's back to the commission for a motion.
Move approval of the recommended action.
Thank you, Commissioner McCowan. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you, sir. So we have a motion. I see no other comment. Please do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 7B. CALAFCO calls for legislative action. Staff, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you. We received some requests from CALAFCO for letters of support and/or opposition. I'll go through them very briefly. AB 1822 is the annual omnibus bill that cleans up language in the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act. LAFCO is requesting a letter of support for that. I should say this starts on page 95 of your agenda packet. AB 1253 is the LAFCO funding bill that was put forward last year and died for lack of being in the budget. Can't think of the word at the moment, but anyway, this is being put forward again and would address dissolution of districts, and also the payment of costs associated with special studies, particularly for actions that would benefit disadvantaged unincorporated communities. So LAFCO is requesting support for that one. AB 818 is the reinstatement of ERAF funding for incorporations. This is the same as last year's bill, AB 2491. So again, CalLAFCO is requesting a support letter on that one. AB 600, CalLAFCO is requesting opposition letters. This is for some unfunded mandates for LAFCOs. So CalLAFCO was concerned with the wording of the bill and the unfunded mandate portion of that. So draft letters have been included in your packet, starting on page 97, and staff is looking for direction.
Questions of staff or general statements, comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. Seeing no one come forward, it's back to the commission. And we do have a recommendation for a motion.
I so move.
Okay,
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Seeing no other comment, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Yes.
Commissioner Huff?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes. All right. We're just trucking this morning. Huh. Okay, we're gonna move on to item 8, information and report items. So under 8A, we have work plan, current and future proposals. Staff?
Thank you. We still have the active application, which is the pre-application for the Wager detachment from the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District. That response has been provided to the applicant, and we had requested some information from the county auditor, which we haven't connected yet on that. So that is pending that clarification. We have 2 applications on hold still. I should say I added the Moores annexation to the Irish Beach Water District this month. We have had some contact from Bill Moores, who has requested that we restart the application process. My understanding is that the Board of Supervisors has taken action on a general plan and LCP amendment that he had before the board and had denied that. So I've requested, both in writing and by phone, an update to his proposal based on that denial, and also a deposit to work against in the future. We have 2 potential future projects. There's no change here. There's the Anderson Valley CSD, proposed activation of latent powers for water and wastewater services. And then we have the Millview County Water District proposed annexation of Masonite properties. I have been talking with Mr. Redding and SHN engineers about the necessary steps forward, and also some discussions about the CEQA portion of that application. For the work plan updates, we're happy to say that the city of Willits is done. The Brook Trails Township Community Services District, the administrative draft is with the district and being reviewed, and we hope to have that to workshop next month.
One moment, please.
I just
Commissioner
wanted
Orth?
to say we did have 2 meetings. We completed our staff work, so I thought I was just going to say I'm not going to be here in July, so I also hope it's in June.
Okay. Thank you.
She completed it? You
Uh,
completed your...
Just
that-
on this item. So
That's it.
would you
I have
like
a
to go?
question. I have a
Okay.
question. Last month, Commissioner Rosenberg asked about the update on the consolidation of the Upper Russian River Water Agency. Any update?
I do not have an update. I need to reach out and figure out who to contact about that now that the general manager, Tamara Alanis, was doing it. I'm not sure who's doing it in her stead. Or the point of contact, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you might contact Mr. Redding and ask that question.
Okay, thank you, I will.
Okay, that's all.
But as far as I know, they're still meeting. But with the changes in staff and coming back together with Willow Water District into the JPA, I think it's just at a lull right now.
Sure be nice to see it happen.
So, okay, please move forward.
I have nothing more to add about the updates unless there's some more questions.
Okay. Seeing none, seeing no public, we'll
We
move
have one.
forward. Yes, oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, while we're talking about water, there were two other issues. One is PG&E pulling out of the dam, and I wondered if that would affect us in any way and what's happening with that. And then also the consolidation of the water districts that we were following, that we're working towards a consolidation. And I wonder if we have any updates on that.
Well, and that is just what Commissioner Ward asked, and there isn't any. I think it's at a lull because they've had changes in staff, and they're just getting back together. I believe that Willow Water District had walked away from the process and is now coming back in. So as far as updates on that, former Commissioner Silver used to keep us informed because she sat on the JPA. But I think contact by staff to Mr. Redding would help. Then talking about the Potter Valley project, I would like to say that yes, it was a very big surprise that PG&E pulled their pre-application out of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. There is an entity, a JPA, we all know, Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission, excuse me, that has been working in that area. And there's 5 entities that belong to the IWPC, and each entity put in $20,000 for a total of $100,000 to get them through the auction process to the next step with PG&E. But when PG&E did what they did, that was thrown out the window, and it was hiring consultants. So the notice of intent to get to the next step with PG&E was being worked on, and it was 4 days before it was due that PG&E did what they did. So now what occurs with that is that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission received a letter from PG&E. This is action that FERC has not had to deal with nationwide previously, and especially since it's a major water supply to communities. And FERC responded by putting out a notice. And FERC, in all their regulation, has rules, so it was kind of odd that they came out the way that they did. And it was a notice to entities if they had an interest in stepping in to take, I guess is the best way to put it, to take over the pre-application process that had been started by PG&E. And that is a 90-day, or I think it's 90-day, maybe it's 120, but it goes to June 28th, and some type of application would probably have to be submitted by an entity. And I can go no further in discussion of this publicly because I'm signed on to a non-disclosure agreement. But this is where the process is. Everything I've stated is public information as we speak. So that's the latest update, and the clock is ticking.
Thank you very much. But that's a really scary thing, and
Yes. It is. It's caused me some nights not to sleep. So, anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, other comment, we'll go to the executive officer's report. Oh. Sorry, I skipped right over that. Do we have correspondence?
We had no correspondence, thank you.
Okay,
It's good to check.
thank you. Should wear my glasses when I'm looking. Please go forward.
Thank you. For reporting, I have had a couple of meetings with City of Ukiah staff regarding their general plan update process. I want to thank Commissioner Huff for meeting with me and spending a little bit of time going over what LAFCO does and municipal service reviews and sphere of influence updates. I've had continuing updates from the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District and their consultants who have, I've had a couple of conference calls with them. They've been very proactive in reaching out to us to keep us updated on some of the issues they're going through. They've had a lot of staffing changes and also some of the discussions they're having with the, about possible contracting. I've also had some discussions with the Resource Conservation District, Megan McClure, and their Sustainable Ag Lands Committee? Is it committee? Committee. About the identification of ag lands on specific properties around the Ukiah Valley area. One of the difficulties with LAFCO's definition of ag lands is that it's different than the one that's often used for CEQA purposes. So the RCD, through their Sustainable Ag Lands Committee, had done ag lands identification throughout the Ukiah Valley. And so one of the questions I had for her was if they went down to parcel-specific identification. If we get into doing any sphere updates or annexations in the Ukiah Valley, that is one of the things we'll have to look at, is the whether or not those parcels are ag lands, which does become relevant when we look at the proposal from Millview County Water District and their annexation of lands around the Masonite property. So I'm working with her to see if they have that information and if maybe we can collaborate on the identification of ag lands in that area. Another interesting point that Megan brought up is that they are putting forward a proposal for some grant funding based on their Sustainable Ag Lands Committee report that they presented on to the Commission a few months ago. There was legislation last year that made LAFCO eligible to participate in those sorts of grant proposals. So I'm following what they are putting forward. I believe it's going to tie into the report that they did, and also possibly into the climate action plan that the county is considering as well. Larkin Filer, our analyst, and I attended the CALAFCO workshop in April, I guess. It was in San Jose. There were quite a few technical sessions on policy making, resolutions, CEQA, and also the clerk role in particular. There was a very interesting session on municipal service reviews and the legal vulnerabilities of making determinations, which are essentially findings, and best management practices for preparing municipal service reviews and making determinations. And if the commission is interested, I would be happy to give a kind of a presentation on some of those at a later date to the commission during one of our meetings.
How are we doing? How's our MSRs?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I did want to note that I think the question was raised is how many LAFCOs actually prepare sphere updates every 5 years, and I think 2 people raised their hand. So most people are on the 8-year mark. Some, there's a little bit of waffle room in the language of the CKH that says update every 5 years as needed. So there are some that interpret that to be more than 8 years, truly as needed. So it is the full range of that target. So just thought I'd pass that on. I think that's all I have to report. So.
Any questions or statements? Commissioner?
You mentioned something about the ag lands definition differs between CEQA and LAFCO. Can you be more specific?
Sure. CEQA really relies upon the Department of Conservation state land mapping of prime and lands of importance. Can't remember the word right now, but so they rely mainly on that mapping that's done. LAFCO expands that a little bit to include lands that may not be identified on that map. So, and it has to do with ag production over a certain amount of money, or ag production that has happened within 5 years. So if a land may not be identified on that map, but was in ag production within the past 5 years, then it would qualify as an ag land under LAFCO's laws.
Or is in production.
Or is in production, correct.
And the examples, the Department of Conservation does farmland mapping, and an entity, an agency does their general plan, and you zone certain lands for your growth or what have you. And the one example I'll use is what we call the Masonite property, but it's Ross Liberty. But Masonite, back in the day, when land around them came up for sale, they went and bought it. And most of the time it was zoned ag. And then they immediately went in and did a rezoning, changing it to industrial. And so those parcels were there. Other individuals bought those parcels and are using them for ag production. And the Department of Conservation, with their farmland mapping, doesn't care what you zone land. And I'll have to say, for Ukiah Valley, for the county, and also for the city of Ukiah, within their sphere of influence, it was important to make sure you protected agricultural corridors where you wouldn't allow further development or sewer lines to go out or water mains. And then the trade-off was to identify where development could take place. And there was a lawsuit, and I can't remember all the details, but Department of Conservation and their farmland mapping will identify this as ag. So because there wasn't a complete CEQA document when they were looking at doing development, and it was zoned, I believe, industrial, it ended up not being rezoned, and whomever won the lawsuit, and the other entity didn't want to go forward with a full-blown CEQA document. So it's just,
Right.
and so this particular committee that formed has been working on a plan to protect agricultural land, and mainly land that is pushed by development of city borders, so to speak. And it probably mainly applies to Ukiah Valley and Little Lake Valley, where there is ag going on.
I remember from the wonderful session we had at Yosemite last year for CALAFCO about annexation and identification and preservation of primary ag properties, zoning. The reason I was asking about this, is there a benefit to try and, especially since we do a lot of CEQA consideration of adopting or modifying any definitions that would down the road make CEQA and LAFCO consistent? Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. Consistent. That's the word.
Thanks for the word.
It is certainly up to local LAFCOs to refine the definition and through their policies. That is definitely a possibility. There is a discussion on the CalAFCO Executive Officer listserv right now about this, who is best qualified to identify those lands of agricultural. And the discussion has branched out. Everyone does it a little bit differently. Some rely on the county ag commissioner. Some make the call themselves. that was one of the reasons I reached out to the Sustainable Ag Lands Committee, because I knew they had done that report, and they do have the mapping down to the parcel level, but they don't have funding at this time to access those maps for software reasons. Excuse me, I believe that the ag commissioner, county ag commissioner, was part of that committee or part of those discussions in developing that report. So I'll reach out to them as well.
Thank you for the explanation, and I really appreciate your report.
I just wanted to add another feature to that, which is called Purple Pipe, which has not been part of the consideration up to this point, and I know the Ukiah Valley Sewer Facility is looking at Purple Pipe. The
More
state,
than looking at it.
more than looking
It's
at it.
done, almost all.
Okay, so when an annexation goes forward, if there's ag identified and there's purple pipe placed in the road system for servicing those ag parcels, that would be a new feature of consideration. I just wanted to put that forward.
But there always is a big debate, and I have sat on that particular committee through the years that it's been formed. Board of Supervisors did approve their plan, and it was actually county that applied for the grant funding. And there is another round that's going to be happening, and I believe the county is going to be asked by the committee to once again apply for the grant funding to be used for the RCD, who actually is the staff. And then the committee, and the committee is made up of also land trusts all over the county, and just different representatives. And the ag commissioner has sat on that from the beginning. Okay. More business. And I'm sorry I didn't mention Point Arena. You've got agricultural land fairly close there, Manchester and grazing and what have you too.
Yep, dairy,
Yeah.
Yeah, drafts.
giraffes, yes, water buffalo, zebras.
Well, saying water buffalo, I had a rancher friend of ours, because we're always trading meat to see who does the best job. But he brought me a water buffalo T-bone.
How was it?
I haven't tried it yet. So it'll be interesting. Okay. Anything else? Or we can move?
I could add one more thing. Over the last few months, I've been corresponding with a gentleman from the UC Berkeley regarding a potential harbor district formation for the city of Point Arena. Provided him information on the process for starting or initiating a district formation, and some discussion about the benefits of be part of the city or a special district. And I understand that he is finishing up his capstone project, I believe, and he'll be finishing that up, and then there'll be a presentation to the city council of Point Arena. And he promised to let me know when that was going to be, but when it is, I'll send that information out.
Okay, that would be great. And maybe we can have an agenda item for Commissioner Ignacio to come do a full report for us.
That'd be great.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Moving forward, committee reports. There aren't any. Moving on to the next item, commissioner reports, comments, or questions.
For commissioners?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to bring up again, it came up today with the City of Willits MSR. A few months back, we received a bunch of information on tax sharing agreements with other counties. And I'd like to bring that back and have some discussion in that in the future. Have we made any progress on that?
We sent out the letter as requested by the commission, encouraging the discussion around tax share agreements to the county and to the cities as well. I'm not sure what LAFCO's role in it would be at this point. It's really a discussion that needs to be had between the county and the agencies.
Yeah, it is, our purpose though is to provide orderly growth as well as efficient service, municipal services, and it seems like we always get stumbled with this tax sharing agreement stuff, and it's certainly, I know there's issues in the other counties as well, but somebody's doing it, and somebody is coming up with a program that seems to work, so it'd be nice to get, and I know we're not, again, the forefront, but maybe we should be sort of the person to encourage it, you know, the discussion, because we can't really do any annexations unless that's taken care of.
And I think unless there's a project that's being discussed between city and the county, they're just not moving forward for a potential of that happening. And I think that if you look at Sonoma County, they have a one-size-fits-all with the county and all their cities that they have done. I don't think that type of agreement would work for our county because of the different sections and concerns and what have you, that I don't think all the cities would agree that, and I think they would want their own separate agreement as we move in the future.
That is a way that is, many counties that I know of that have master tax share agreements do set up individual master tax share agreements with each of their cities for that reason, because they're very different. I can certainly put together some information. This is going to become definitely a topic as we get into the City of Ukiah's municipal service review and sphere update, where we take a close look at the sphere, which has not been updated since the early 90s, I believe. I would be happy to put together an informational report and bring that to the commission.
Well, it's just not just the cities too, excuse me, it's also the districts. I mean, I know we had this issue with Anderson Valley, and it was very disappointing to see that they didn't want to take on any more territory because the taxes weren't there to help support it. So anyhow, I just think it needs to be brought back.
And just two responses. One, City of Ukiah did do a sphere of influence update, but didn't follow through with LAFCO action. And I know that they have looked at it again, and that may happen in the future. I don't want to say immediate future, but right now it's still the former sphere of influence, which is ridgetop to ridgetop, Highway 20 to Burke Hill, because it has not come before this body to change their sphere of influence. So that needs to be done. And then, what was the other item you talked about?
Anderson Valley?
Anderson Valley. I think the CSA 3, and when we get looking at emergency services and how it's handled throughout the county, I think the CSA 3 might help take care of the issue that you're talking about with Anderson Valley.
Well, that was just one example I was bringing up.
But others as well. Hang on, Carol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm going to agree with our executive director. I don't think LAFCO has a role per se until something comes forward. So it's really up to the entity, whether it's the county and a city or the district and another district, whatever the entities are, it's up to them to negotiate a tax sharing agreement. That's what the law provides for. I think LAFCO's role, if an application for annexation comes in, would be to make sure that the correct entities are speaking to each other, and potentially at that point could offer some assistance to help facilitate the discussion. But the process of tax sharing is really driven by an application for annexation. If you don't have that, there's
And it mainly addresses property and not necessarily sales tax.
a requirement of state law that there be an agreement for property tax, but as a practical matter, in the wake of Prop 13 and the fiscalization of land use, it would not be reasonable for a county or a city to have a tax sharing agreement that did not include sales tax and potentially transient occupancy tax. But the only state requirement is for property tax. But I think there's confusion around what does master tax sharing mean. And there's two separate meanings of it. One is you could have an agreement where a county and all the cities have a master tax sharing agreement if this is how annexations and tax sharing will be handled. But it's also between, say, a city and an individual county. Master tax sharing includes not just the property tax, but sales tax, transient occupancy tax. So, you know, I think the original direction master tax sharing agreement didn't necessarily mean that LAFCO is recommending that the county and all the cities have one agreement. And I tend to agree with the chair, that's probably not practical in Mendocino County. For instance, I'm not aware of any annexation plans by the city of Point Arena. Willits seems to be focused primarily on certain residential areas, and that's very different from the situation in Ukiah and potentially Fort Bragg.
Commissioner Rosenberg.
What I was thinking of is not about tax sharing, but we have had differences between special districts in the city where they're overlapping. And that will be very important, I think, to be clear on what our LAFCO role will be. I think we have some in our policies about meeting the needs of the ratepayers. But I think this is part of the same discussion about what kinds of policies we have when there is there was the issue between the city of Ukiah and the water district to the south. And I remember that was a bit difficult for us to I think we need to be really clear on what the parameters are when we have the discussions between cities and special districts.
Anyone else? Can't pack your bags yet. Okay.
We get the hint. Quit talking.
CALAFCO, item number 8F.
Just have two things to report. One, CalLAFCO is moving their offices, so they're in flux this next week. But she said there should only be like 1 day of downtime and should be no interruption to their website stuff. The other thing was the legislative report is included in your your packet, starting on page 106. And I can look into any of the legislative items if there is interest, but I won't go through them.
We've been busy.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that we had asked you to get their budget and look at their budget over time because we wanted to know why they were raising their fees and not using the fees that they collect in their annual meetings to help pay their budget. And I noticed a huge jump in their executive salary. And I wondered if you had any more information on that.
I believe the jump has to do with CalLAFCO becoming more active in legislative matters.
Yeah, and I went over the budget as well, and I also looked at their bylaws and what is being said about membership dues. And as far as I know, they were supposed to increase by a certain percent each year. That didn't occur. Is that correct, Uma?
I think for a while it didn't, and then for the last 2 or 3 years it did, but there was some make-up time, you're right.
Right, and then with the change in the staffing and more time, they're going to be asking for higher dues. But it was very interesting going over each one of their proposals and options and trying to figure it all out. And what I took away from studying it, was certain LAFCOs, if you're gonna charge everyone equally, that's not right, to me. It should be the increment of, you know, the size of your budget, size of your county. I don't think our LAFCO should be paying the same amount that LA County pays, or Orange County,
I
or
think there were
San Diego.
Excuse me, I think there were two districts, big counties and little counties, but not all little counties are the same. I mean,
Yeah, well, that, on this, it doesn't, it shows several scenarios. Yeah,
I originally brought it up because they were making money off of their CALAFCO conference.
conference.
And then they were charging us an increase in our dues. And I thought, well, why not just have your conference just at a cost-only basis and then use the extra money to reduce their dues? Because there's lots of cities and counties that bring a lot of people to the conference, more so than us. So anyways, that was the reason I originally brought it up. But we gotta keep an eye on them too.
Yeah. It's that scale of weight, you know, which way are you gonna go? So, it looks like Commissioner Gonzalez had it right. We are now at adjournment at 10:10. We're adjourned. Thank you.